Hello, everyone, and welcome to another installment of TEDXcellence, the ongoing live series wherein I attempt to maintain my sanity while in my Corona bunker by watching questionable intellectual presentations. Thank you for joining me today on this lovely, what day is it? Thursday? I think it's Thursday. Yes, it's Thursday. Thursday? Yeah, it's Thursday. And hello to those of you who have, by luck or by pluck, ended up here with me. As you know, or as you may or may not know, I guess I should say, YouTube is currently having some problems alerting people to the oncoming live streams that their subscriptions might be posting or new videos and such. So I've just sort of given up on giving too much prior notice, except for putting it out on Twitter. And because with the way my work schedule is right now, well, when time frees itself up, I take advantage of it. So if you're joining me in the future after I've already done this, I'm sorry you missed the live show, but hey, here we are. Rock me like a hurricane. And hello to those of you who are here. Della Hayes, hello. W.R. Costin, hello. Attack Alpaca, hello. The Dead Kaiser, hello. Kiever Dam, hello. Fairly Becca, hello. Steve Luzon, hello. Seamus. My Sean Connery is showing up again. Seamus Derby, hello. Zalbla, hello. Chicago Mike, hello. Tartan Rose, hello. Cryptic, hello. Flabberjack, hello. Michael Hatfield, hello. All right, guys, so today we're going to tackle a subject that I've done a handful of videos on in the past, but a subject that has always fascinated me in concept, and that is restorative justice. Now, what is restorative justice? Well, okay, here's my rough understanding of it, and there is plenty of nuance and plenty of other details, and certainly other people have different opinions, but it can be summed up with the... Now, you know what? I'm not even going to be that dismissive of it, because I was about to say, well, it can be summed up in the phrase I used on the thumbnail, kiss and make up. That's dismissive, too dismissive. The idea is that after a crime has been committed, that the victim and the perpetrator would come to some kind of one-on-one personal resolution to it, to try to, I don't know, find some closure, find some kind of balance to whatever had happened. So, for example, and this is just a rough hypothetical, someone breaks into my house and steals my TV, and then they are arrested, and then at some point, he or she, I guess, I'll be fair and say the robber and I have to sit down, and the robber has to be confronted by me, wherein I express to the robber the pain and or trauma and or inconvenience, etc., that this robber caused me. And then this robber has an opportunity to explain themselves, apologize, etc., coming to some sort of, I don't know, equilibrium of understanding, perhaps. And through this process, the robber, conceivably, has the opportunity to try to make amends or further the chances of them rehabilitating. Now, in the most extreme examples of this that I've seen, the suggestion is made that somehow this process would be a replacement for incarceration. I'm always curious exactly how that is meant to work. And again, there's different interpretations and different policies that have been pushed on this. The most famous example that's brought up almost every time I've seen a speech on this, and I don't know if it's going to be brought up here, because like all the other TEDx videos that I've done in this series, I haven't watched this ahead of time. The one example that's always brought up is the truth and reconciliation process that took place in South Africa, most especially after apartheid. And the idea there was that those who were victims of apartheid could confront the white landowners and or other people who had profited off of apartheid, and somehow that would ease the wounds or something. And this process is often held up as sort of the gold standard for what restorative justice could be across the world, more or less. However, if you actually look at what restorative justice or the Truth and Reconciliation process in South Africa actually did, is a lot of that led to mostly dissatisfaction. Because the crimes committed by those in South Africa weren't redressed in any way, or the people that were actually responsible for true crimes of violence or deprivation or something, they didn't really have to be held to account as fully as they would have wanted, like being incarcerated or being fined or something. Some of that did take place, but the Truth and Reconciliation Councils weren't about that. They were about trying to come to some sort of accord. Except that when somebody wrongs you in that way, if they commit a crime against you, deprive you of your rights or your property or injure you in some fashion, just talking it out 9 times out of 10 doesn't solve anything. And it doesn't necessarily make the perpetrator less likely to perpetrate again. It's one of those balancing acts of incarceration versus rehabilitation, etc. Anyway, I'll stop there with my own babbling about it, but that's in the sort of broad strokes, more or less, how I understand the concept of restorative justice. So our speaker will, of course, talk more extensively on that as we proceed. Kiever Dam says compromise. Like I said, I don't know. I don't have a better word for it right now off the top of my head, just after work. An understanding is probably a better thing. An understanding, some sort of maybe compromise of emotions. I don't know. There's a whole bunch of different mechanisms that go into this concept. So let me just cease my babbling and we'll move on to the video. Remember, guys, I'm going to start up, let it play a few seconds to make sure the sound is working. I'll need you guys to give me a hi sign that you can hear it all right. I did take the time to boost the audio outside prior, so hopefully it is audible. And it sounded good to me, but we'll see. So all that being said, here we go.
I'd like you to recall a time when you were really hurt by another person.
Okay, can you all recall a time when you were really hurt by another person? You guys all hear that? Becca Fairley says, yep. Chicago Mike says, good. All right, I'll take that as gospel. Can I recall a time that I was hurt by another person? Well, define hurt. Emotionally hurt? Yes. Physically hurt? Sure. Let's see what she means.
Maybe physically. Maybe they lied to you or broke your trust. Maybe they stole something from you or put their interest ahead of yours. In that moment, and the weeks and the months following, what was it that you really wanted?
What was it that I really wanted? Well, in the case of something being stolen, I wanted my property back, but that thankfully hasn't happened all that often in my life. As far as being hurt by somebody, well, usually it's in the realm of being lied to, being betrayed in some fashion. My philosophy, personally, that I've developed over years, usually in situations like that, where someone has lied to you or done something emotionally scarring or whatever else, short of it being an actual crime that could be prosecuted, the only thing I can generally think of is something like karma, but is also sort of, I don't know, trying to move past it. And that is, there are two outcomes for people who act badly in a knowing fashion towards someone and hurt them, betray them, lie, etc. Outcome number one, they eventually realize the damage that they've done and do one or both of two things. One, never do that again and try to become a better person. And or two, take the extra step of trying to make amends to those that they've wronged. The other option is they continue in that behavior going forward in their life, and they continue to reap the rewards of someone who acts that way. It's basically it, because I've come to understand there really is no quote unquote justice for things like that, not on the temporal plane anyway. And the only reason that I have that somewhat half optimistic notion is because it actually happened to me once. My first real job out of college, it turned out that I was in the same, I was on the same floor as someone that I went to junior high with. And this person had been a terrible, terrible person to me in junior high. But, it's junior high, so kid stuff, whatever. But regardless, even though we were essentially adults at that point, early 20s, I didn't have a very high opinion of this person. My only memories of this person were being as a bully or someone that was not being nice to me, I'll just say in summary. And so I didn't really acknowledge this person, even though I was fairly sure they recognized me, and I certainly recognized them. And we were in different departments. So I figured, okay, well, we both ended up at the same place, whatever, and, life goes on. Well, within the first 3 or 4 days of my being there, this person from my past, without prompting, without my having said a word, they come up to me at my desk and they say, hey, are you, and they say my name. And I say, yeah. And they say, yeah, do you remember me? And I'm like, yeah. Look, I know this is weird, they said. But did I ever hurt you in school? Was I ever mean to you? Because I was a really, really, really bad person back then. And I don't remember all the things that I did. But if I did, I just wanted to apologize. And it was a benchmark moment in my life. I make no bones about it. Benchmark moment in my life where I saw someone through no prompting, no goading or anything, just spontaneously try to make up for past wrong acts. And I immediately forgave this person everything. It was just reflexive. I didn't say it out loud or something at the time, more or less, but in my heart of hearts, as soon as they did that, that act of acknowledgement, that act of contrition, I suppose, penance, whatever you want to call it, whatever. And then granted, I hadn't thought about this person in any way, real shape or form until I had seen them again at that job, because it was years back and everything. But all those bad memories just became nothing. Like, whatever, it's fine. It's cool. Thank you. And it was one of the most significant sort of person to person moments I'd ever had in my life. And that one moment taught me that it is possible to make amends, even in a small way like that. Someone just has to take the initiative to do it without it seeming like it's being forced upon them or something. So sorry for the ramble. I just wanted to get away. That's where my mind is at when it comes to things like that. Okay, moving on.
What would have actually made you feel better? So in years of asking this question to my students, to justice professionals in courtrooms and prisons, and to victims of crime, a handful of people have told me, honestly, it would have made me feel better to key their car.
Okay. And I also want to mention, I'm not coming at this subject necessarily looking to be just lambasting it. I mean, I'm honestly curious. I don't necessarily agree with the concept. I don't think it could be effective. I don't think it actually could dole out justice in especially the most heinous of crimes. But I am curious about the pitch, the sales pitch of it. So that's where I'm coming from in this particular instance.
But not many. Actually, nearly all of us want the same thing. You want them to look you in the eye, acknowledge what happened, and maybe, if it's genuine, apologize.
That is true. Except for actual crimes. This is the line where I start to diverge from this notion. So I'll be curious to see how she pitches that for actual crimes, not just personal drama or personal betrayals or things like that, but actual violations of, one's civil rights or safety or property.
And you want a chance to explain how they've impacted your life and see them really get it.
Well, if they didn't get it, why would they be apologizing? Right? I mean, if they didn't understand, if they didn't have a concept of it, like the person at my job, they had spent God knows how many years at that point reflecting on the person they had been and already knew or had some notion of what they'd done. And that's where the apology came from. That's what made it spontaneous and genuine. So
you want answers to some questions so you can stop trying to figure out how this happened, how you could have protected yourself better, and whether you can trust someone again.
Unless this person is a stranger, in that case, trust is irrelevant. But I digress.
It's important to know that these are not things our justice system offers crime victims. In fact, there are all sorts of real and symbolic barriers that prevent people who cause harm from being accountable to the people they hurt.
Well, that's why we have a justice system that operates on the state basis. So it's not a one-on-one person versus person thing, that we collectively as a society have certain rules that we are expected to adhere to. And if you offend one of us, you've offended all of us. Besides which, the state should not take on the part of defending or representing individuals, but representing the whole. That's why they're the state.
The first thing they hear is, you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be held against you in a court of law. In other words, don't apologize and don't take accountability because you might jeopardize your legal case.
No, that is warning them that anything they say can be held against them. They have the right against self-incrimination, just like everybody else. If they want to apologize, if they're immediately guilty of conscience and want to confess, nothing's stopping them. They have the right to remain silent. They are not required to. Okay.
For crime victims, the most consistent ways to participate in the justice process are a private consultation with the DA or reading a statement during sentencing.
Because the state is offended on your behalf. The collective of society is offended on your behalf. Keeping some separation between you and the accused is to give the accused the opportunity to defend themselves against the charges of the state and not make it a 1v1 situation. Because that's the insulating power of putting the state between the accuser and the accused is meant to protect the rights of the accused while giving the accuser, represented by the state, as much force behind it to prove the charges. I'm not a criminal justice expert, but I kind of understand the concept.
You may have no interaction with the offender whatsoever. They may not even be allowed to make eye contact with you in the courtroom. In most states, incarcerated people aren't allowed contact with victims and their family members, even if they both request it.
Okay. Well, in that last situation, I'm not quite sure why that would be, depending. But do you want a rape suspect being able to look the victim or, presumed victim in the eye? You want a murder suspect to be able to look at the family or intimidate them or make faces or something? I'm just saying, like I said, I'm waiting for her to tell us that this does not apply, for the most part, to the most extreme of offenses.
So maybe we could accept some of these failures if our justice system worked in other ways. And by worked, I mean kept people on the outside safe and changed people on the inside for the better.
Wow, without even offering any actual details or ideas. The concept is great. True, yes, in a utopian situation, everybody outside of a prison is safe, and everybody inside a prison is, in some way, shape, or form, being rehabilitated, so that by the time they get out, they will not commit crimes anymore. It's a pie in the sky situation, but it's kind of the best that we have.
But our justice system utterly fails everyone it touches. Not a surprise, right? In prison, people get hurt instead of helped. And no matter how strict we get, no matter how much control that we exert, 50 to 70% of people who leave prison are back within 3 years.
And whose fault is that, might I ask? Making the decision to commit further crimes, might I ask? Thank you, tall person. Dang it, scribe. I was in the middle of watching your last TEDXcellence vid. Ah, well, happy National Make Up Your Own Holiday Day, everybody. Is that really what today is? Make up your own holiday? Okay. Today is TEDXcellence Day. I give everybody permission to stay home today for TEDXcellence Day. You're welcome.
The communities most with the highest rates of incarceration, poor communities of color, actually have more stress, trauma, and mental illness. I could go on and on. But instead, I want to talk to you about restorative justice.
You could go on and on about people making decisions to commit crimes, harm other people, and maybe that's why they go to prison, regardless of what they look like. I mean, I won't deny that poverty inspires more crime. This is true. If people aren't poor, if people aren't desperate, they're probably less likely to commit crimes of opportunity for personal enrichment or otherwise. That being said, if you choose to commit a crime, you've committed a crime. It's a choice you've made, and you will be punished for it if you're caught. That's just the way of the world.
A surprising approach that might offer better outcomes for victims, offenders, and the communities they live in. And I want to suggest that in order for it to work, we all have to do our part.
Oh, okay. So the responsibility's on victims or potential victims to help criminals? Okay.
Now, restorative justice is not a new idea. Some people say it's the most common approach to justice across the world and throughout time.
Possibly so. Thank you. This is Kyle. Hello, chat people and Scribble. Yes, I am singular in so many ways.
But that somewhere along the way, we forgot how to do it. It's a philosophy that says getting justice means repairing harm.
There's also a philosophy of an eye for an eye, which is brought up quite a bit. But, there's a lot of old concepts to what justice means.
In restorative justice, repairing harm happens through face-to-face dialogues between the people harmed and the people responsible. For instance, here in Colorado, hundreds of cases are diverted from the courts each year through restorative conferences that bring together victims, offenders, and affected community members to agree on how to repair harms after a property crime or an assault.
Okay, hold on a second. So she was criticizing the process of a trial. The accused isn't allowed to look at the accuser and that kind of thing. All right, well, how do you determine who is responsible without first going through the trial process? I mean, the person could be falsely accused. You have to go through that process to determine guilt, at least beyond a reasonable doubt. Otherwise, you cannot put two people in a room, one the victim and one the person responsible, unless you know, beyond a reasonable doubt, that the person there is responsible. And if they claim their innocence during the course of the trial, wouldn't sitting down in front of this person be an admission of guilt if they still claimed innocence after the fact? And what if they actually were innocent? There are little flaws here, I think, in how she's approaching this, but we'll see. Thank you, Cryptic. I like just ass. Just, okay. I'm slow on the uptake on that one. Thank you, tall person. Happy TEDXcellence Day, everybody. That's right, everybody. It's officially TEDXcellence Day. You are given permission by me to stay home. So there you go. And thank you, Chicago Mike. Got to go back to work. I'll have to finish watching later. All right, Mike. Well, mark it here. This is where you missed at 4:35 on the video that I'm watching. I don't know what time it is now. Okay.
For example, someone who vandalized a local business might agree to repaint the wall themselves.
Okay, sure. Is that in replacement of a time in jail or some kind of fine elsewise, or is that on top of?
Someone who caused a car accident might agree to pay the victim's medical bills.
What if the victim's dead? What do you do then? Just curious.
And sometimes agreements are symbolic, like writing a letter of apology, doing a service project, or volunteering with the victim's favorite charity.
Well, I suppose granted that the person is already out of jail to do the latter two of those things, and depending on the crime. But what about rape? What about murder? Tell me about those.
But the goal of these agreements and the whole process is always to meet the needs that were created by the crime and to facilitate direct accountability.
Okay, so if someone gets into a car accident because they were drunk and they kill my sister, are they then going to try to take my sister's place? Does that meet the needs of the results of the crime? I know I'm being extreme here, but I can't help but bring up the extreme examples if you're going to offer a notion of restorative justice across the board. And unless or until she actually addresses serious crimes and felonies, I'm going to keep asking about them.
I am not saying that restorative justice is the answer to every criminal case.
Okay, but...
or all the complex problems with the criminal justice system. And I want to be clear that victims should always have a choice about if and when they meet someone that harmed them. But what I am saying is that this is a transformative approach that can be used far more often than we may believe. And studies of Colorado's diversion programs show that 95% of both victims and offenders are satisfied with the process, and that offenders have a recidivism rate of just 8%.
Okay, I would love to know the name of this study, who conducted it, etc. I can only take it on your word that it says what it says and it's actually true. So what level of offense would this apply to? Because if you're going to put this into practice systematically, you'd have to draw a line. As far as the law is concerned, you'd have to draw a line as to where this is available as an option or as some kind of supplementary and where it isn't. So where is that line?
This is a select group of cases, but it's also an enormous difference.
Wait, a select group of cases? That's not how the system works. You have to draw a line. You have to say, this is where this applies and this is where it doesn't. Or is it going to be like a committee thing where you review the crime and see if there's room there for restorative justice? Or an offer to be made to the victims? I mean, it really should be in the hands of the victims first and foremost. Do they want to participate? Because if they don't want to participate, the whole thing falls apart on its face, doesn't it?
And this is what a system designed to keep people safe should be doing: healing victims and preventing harm.
Okay, it's one of those things. You don't have a problem until after the problem's already happened. You know, you don't know who the criminal is until after they've committed a crime. So the harm's already been done. Keeping people safe, well, that is up to law enforcement. It's also up to the individual to choose not to commit more crimes. It's not up to the victims to help the criminal stop committing crimes.
So if restorative justice works so well, why isn't it the basis for our current justice system?
Because it doesn't work. I mean, I imagine ages and ages ago in ancient times, some form of it has been tried, and still today in some small ways it is tried and used, etc., depending on the circumstances. But as the foundation for a justice system where people commit crimes upon one another and there has to be standards set, having a touchy-feely meeting between the victim and the offender doesn't create an actual sense of justice, nor does it necessarily deter crime in the way that you would hope to, because words are words. Serving time in a cell is serving time in a cell.
It's a great question. And it's why I started out my career studying why some states were adopting restorative justice into their state codes and others weren't. And I was actually surprised to find that most states have adopted legislation that supports the use of restorative justice in criminal cases, but that these policies are rarely put into practice by prosecutors, judges, and correctional officials.
Because it's not up to them to do them. I mean, if the basis of restorative justice is the victim and the offender must have some kind of communication, must have some kind of meeting of the minds, must come to some kind of accord, well, the only person who gets to make that decision, in my book, would be the victim. If the victim is informed that there is an option to do this, they can either take advantage of it or not. And if they don't, then it doesn't happen. Because the one offended here, the one that should have the actual choice in the matter, obviously, is the person who has been harmed. So it's not up to the DA, it's not up to correctional officials, it's not up to judges, it's up to the victim or victims. So I'm not surprised, because oftentimes victims don't want to give the person that's harmed them any kind of advantage over what they've done. Is that the fatal flaw to this? And not to say that it never happens. I've seen stories of dramatic acts of forgiveness. There was that, Amber Geyer, that case last year where the police officer killed a man in his own home, mistakenly, according to her, believing that she was at her own apartment when she was a floor below or a floor above. I forget which one it was. And at the sentencing phase, or the part of the trial after she'd already been convicted and they were getting to the sentencing part where the families could say things they wanted to say, the brother of the victim asked the judge if he could get up and give Amber Geiger a hug and forgive her, because that is what he thought his brother would want. You know, and whether you agree with it or not, whether you agree that she deserved that or not, the gesture made by that brother is one of amazing forgiveness and amazing humanity in a situation that was, if you take the claims of the defendant on the face of it, an accident, unintentional, a horrible, horrible tragedy. So those things can happen. But here's the thing. Amber Geiger is still going to have to serve her sentence.
What I learned when I talked with these potential change agents is that they were either skeptical about restorative justice or they just didn't understand how it fit in their roles.
Because it doesn't fit in their roles. It would be something that the victims could bestow as a gift upon an offender if they so chose. And trust me, forgiveness is a gift in my book. But here's the thing, and also in my book, forgiveness is a gift only that as far as I'm concerned, should only be offered if there is a genuine show of remorse by the offender. Because if the offender doesn't care, if the offender's not actually remorseful, what's the point of forgiving this person? It's like throwing your heart at a brick wall. And people say, oh, you have to forgive this in order to stop hating somebody or whatever else. You can stop hating somebody without forgiving them. You can move on from it and just say that person is bad. They did a bad thing and they're going to have to live with that. And I need to move on without giving them the unearned gift of forgiveness. But you're right. The change agents, the DA, the correctional officials, the judges, it's not their responsibility to implement restorative justice. It's perhaps their option to offer it to the victim. And that's it, as far as I'm concerned.
In other words, they either don't wanna or they don't know how.
Okay, I'm going to harp on this point again and again on this. I can tell already. It's not their responsibility to implement it. It may be their option to offer it to the victim. That is it.
See, restorative justice, face-to-face dialogue about crime, conflict, pain, suffering, it's incredibly difficult, not just for justice professionals, for all of us.
For the victims, especially, because they are the ones directly affected by the crime. Justice officials, they are there in service of the justice system, but they're not necessarily inherently affected by the crime. The rest of us may sit in shock or horror at the crimes committed by someone upon someone else, but we are not directly affected by the crime. So are you going to address the fact that the key component here is the willingness of the victims to participate? I'm very curious.
I teach a class on restorative justice, and my first reaction to conflict is to hide in my office and avoid eye contact with my email account.
Wow, you're an inspiring figure.
I once engineered an elaborate game of phone tag that went on for weeks, just by, like calling at the time when you knew the person wouldn't pick up, just to avoid a difficult conversation.
Do you like to avoid difficult subjects, as in rape, murder, when trying to think up this? And I know you said doesn't apply to all crimes. Okay. I would just like to hear some more specificity about that.
These are silly little examples of our very serious impulse to hide from the people and the situations that cause us pain. My theory is that isolation is our default response to crime because it's actually our default response to conflict. We block, we ghost, we cancel the people who hurt us. And we overuse prison, not because we actually think it makes things better, but because we're afraid of being hurt and we don't know what else to do.
Okay, wait a second. You're going to equate not wanting to send an email, not wanting to have a personal conflict at work with someone who's had their teeth knocked out, someone who's been assaulted, someone who's been maimed in a car accident, and their unwillingness to want to face quote unquote conflict of sitting there with the person that did this to them and have a dialogue? Is that what I am to understand here? That's how you assess this? That we don't want to talk to the person who has violated our safety or our trust, or perhaps that of a family member, because we're just reluctant or we're lazy or something? Thank you, Johnny Hellcat. Sounds like someone worked in customer service. I don't know what this lady is saying now, because she's just put on the same level victims of crime and I'm afraid of having a conflict interpersonally with other people. And somehow jail is, as an option, putting someone away from society who has thus offended society is a failing on the part of the victim to not want to face conflict. Why should they have to face a conflict after they've been victimized by someone? Shouldn't they be given the ability to attempt to live in peace thereafter? Maybe.
We want accountability, but we don't want to have the hard conversations that it requires.
It doesn't. I don't have to have a conversation. If someone steals from me, if someone hurts me, and it justifies a criminal charge, the conversation is they go to trial. They are tried, evidence is presented, and they're either convicted or acquitted. That is the conversation. That is the balancing act of our justice system. And if I've actually been hurt by this person, I don't have to have a conversation I don't want to. It's not my conversation to have. Otherwise, that's a kind of vigilantism. So is restorative justice a replacement for criminal justice, or is it an option for the victim? That's all I need to know. Thank you again, Johnny Hellcat. Additionally, she wants to implement restorative justice but doesn't want to act on it. Give me a break. I'm okay. I'll set aside my bewilderment and we'll continue.
We'd rather believe there's a simple solution that can keep us safe and protect us from pain.
Jail does not protect anybody from pain. I'll tell you that right now. If you get injured, if your sense of security is shattered by somebody's actions, them going to jail does not cure the pain inherently, does not set aside the trauma, depending on what we're talking about. That is up to the person. And that's one of the things that makes jail and makes putting that person away from society one of those very attractive things. Because why should this person, if convicted and if they did it, etc., who without care harmed people around them, why should they get to walk free, conceivably still not caring about the damage that they've done, while I have to live with the effects of their callousness? Right?
It's easy to feel that mass incarceration is something done to us by politicians, police, prosecutors, and prison guards.
Whoa. Mass incarceration. Okay. All right, let's take a step back here. That was an interesting little injection she just put there. Mass incarceration. First, we're talking about the ground level, one-on-one perpetrator-victim conversation. Very, very microcosm thing. Now, suddenly, we're talking about mass incarceration. And what is mass incarceration? Well, it's that we put a lot of people in jail because a lot of people commit crimes. And in a lot of places, we have a very unforgiving justice system when it comes to it. But the way that mass incarceration is constantly framed in speeches and presentations that I see is that you could imagine that giant paddy wagons are just roaming the streets and picking people up willy-nilly without due process and throwing them in jail. You know, that all the lawyers and all the judges and all the correctional officers and all of the other legal professionals are all in on a conspiracy to just put people in jail and keep putting people in jail forever. That's it. That there's a profit motive across the country. Now, let it not be said that there haven't been instances of for-profit institutions actively putting people in their jails or their whatever to make a profit. I am not saying that does not happen. There have been cases where that has happened, especially in juvenile cases and things like that. That does happen. But to say that it is part and parcel with the system, that it happens everywhere, and so on, is bonkers. And they keep bringing up this phrase, mass incarceration, as though it's just a proven fact. It's more like a conspiracy theory. Thank you, Cody Fry. I'd like to see her try to restorative justice with someone like Ted Bundy. Well, again, she said this doesn't necessarily apply to all crimes, but she got no more specific than that. Anyway, moving on.
But it's important to remember that it's something we invest in each time we build virtual and physical walls between ourselves and others. As a result of our inability to face those we hurt, and those who hurt us, we participate, knowingly or unknowingly, in systems of control and isolation.
Our inability to face those. How about we have no obligation to face the people who have hurt us? Our inability, as though it's a weakness. I don't wish to have a sit down with the person who hurt me or hurt my family member, and therefore I have an inability to, and that's my failing. That's what it sounds like she's saying. I don't know if she knows that that's what it sounds like she's saying.
Our policy problem is a people problem. The good news is, restorative justice offers a people solution. It teaches us that what changes our choices is actually not laws. Otherwise, the drug war would be all wrapped up, right? It's actually coming face to face, realizing that we've hurt someone and being willing to make amends.
And that is up, of course, to, I guess, the offender, if they have such an option. Of course, that should be ideally what they're doing without restorative justice, that they don't need restorative justice, that they have enough common humanity and understanding of the crimes they committed and the damage that they've caused, that they take it upon themselves to make such gestures, sincerely or otherwise. But again, I don't care what the criminal wants or needs. The only person here, the only people that matter, the only people that should be making the decision are the victims. Are you going to talk about that very important component?
Similarly, if we want to change the criminal justice system, we have to face each other, take responsibility for our roles in mass incarceration, and do what we can to repair the harm.
It is not my responsibility as the victim of a crime to repair mass incarceration. Besides which, how is that going to repair mass incarceration? Let's say mass incarceration has, she doesn't even explain what mass incarceration means to her, but okay, lots of people going to jail. Let's just put it that way. Lots of people going to jail. However, by whatever mechanisms you believe it to be the case, lots of people going to jail. All right. How does my taking it upon myself to sit down with the person that has harmed me, harmed my family, whatever, going to cure mass incarceration? I mean, if anything, you're making it sound like, and everything that I'm hearing is, I would be doing the criminal a favor by doing this. I would be doing them a favor. Somehow it's my responsibility to try to help the person that hurt me not hurt other people. Is that really what my responsibility is under restorative justice? Because that's what my responsibility becomes under restorative justice. If the onus is on me as the victim to try to solve mass incarceration by sitting down with and giving the offender the opportunity to either try to apologize or play act apologize, because as we all know, all criminals are honest when it comes to looking for advantages for themselves. I mean, is she going to address this? Is she going to address that the only key component that matters here is a victim's willingness to participate? Everything else does not matter.
That's why innovative prosecutors, yes, they exist, creative correctional administrators, committed legislators, even researchers like me, are increasingly coming together to have these hard conversations.
It's not about you.
We're listening to the people who are most impacted: incarcerated people, their families, crime victims, and survivors.
Why weren't crime victims and survivors the first on that list? But why are the criminals and their families your first priority? What is it to them? The person committed the crime. They have to be held responsible for it. They did that to not only the victim of the crime, but their own families by putting themselves behind bars by committing crimes. They have to come to terms with that with their own families. It's not the justice system's responsibility to do that. And why are the victims and or survivors of crime the secondary thought there? That's very telling to me. Maybe it was a Freudian slip. I don't know. That was interesting. Thank you again, Johnny Hellcat. They may have the conversation. She plays phone tag. Yeah. Phone tag and surviving an assault or a family member being murdered or something. And I know I'm going to the extremes again. I know I'm talking about the most extreme examples, but she hasn't said what applies and what doesn't.
And we're designing solutions together that we can all agree on. My experience with restorative justice tells me that the solutions we forge together are far more powerful than the ones we hand down from the safety of our courtrooms and our offices.
Any solutions you come up with completely stop if the victim does not agree to participate. And they should not be forced or cajoled or pressured into participating if they don't want to. And you can sit in the back room with your other researchers and your friends and your DAs and your criminals and come up with ways in which to service the potential for the criminal to do something other than jail time. But all of that is irrelevant, case by case, if a victim does not care to participate.
And I believe this is a restorative movement that can transform the way we think about doing justice. But it will take more than those of us working in the justice system to transform it. It will actually take all of us, because real criminal justice reform will never happen until we face our fear of facing each other.
Yes, again, those of us on the outside of prison, if we do not wish to confront and or have a dialogue with criminals who have done us harm, that is our failing. We are flawed as a society for not wanting to talk to a criminal. Again, that is what it sounds like she is saying, but it sure doesn't look like she thinks that's what she's saying.
It's a really hard thing to do, but I know we can do it because I see incredible, courageous examples in my work all the time.
Right. So those of us that don't wish to participate lack courage. Got it.
Not long ago, I sat at a little round table in the prison visiting area with the wife and the daughter of a man killed in a robbery and the person serving life without parole for his murder.
Okay. So restorative justice is something that you would say applies to the most heinous of crimes then. This is the first specific example you've come to. Certainly the most dramatic. All right. Let's proceed.
The victim's family brought this little hardbound notebook filled with all their unanswered questions, all the things they wanted to tell this man about their lives and what they had lost. And I watched as they led this beautiful, really heartbreaking, but empowering dialogue. And for 6 hours, I didn't say a word.
Huh. Now that is the most shocking revelation of them all.
I didn't have to. Yes, because we had prepared for this moment for months, but mostly because they had the wisdom. The innate human wisdom to say what needs to be said and to do what needs to be done to further our own healing and that of our communities. And you have that wisdom too. We all have the wisdom and the skill and the compassion to restore ourselves to ourselves, not through isolation, but through connection. Thank you.
Okay, so conversely, if you don't participate in this, you lack wisdom, you lack skill, and you lack compassion. Oh, and also courage. Don't forget you lack courage. Now, I noticed that she didn't follow up that little anecdote with, well, what happened with the criminal? Did he do anything after that to make amends? What happened with the victims? Did they feel satisfied, or did they feel they'd reached some kind of closure as a result of that conversation? They may have spent 6 hours together going over stuff, but it's really not the act in and of itself unless there's a result that comes from it that changes something. And if this guy was in prison for life for murdering someone, well, restorative justice sure as heck wasn't going to get him out in the world again. But, you know, I guess those details are just irrelevant to the whole argument. You might tell that I'm a little disappointed. Why am I disappointed? Well, I'm often disappointed with TEDx talks because, and I know this sounds silly, and I know this sounds stupid. I honestly go into these things wanting to be surprised, wanting to come away with something that, like, wow, you know what? That person actually changed my mind. I like it when my mind is changed. I like it when someone gives me an argument that counteracts my own instinctive thinking, you know, because it feels as though I've learned something, and I like learning things. So when I listen to this lady give what essentially amounts to a 12-minute and 37-second platitude about, wouldn't it be nice if we could all just kiss and make up? And that's it. And I think to myself, gosh, she is so proud of herself. Now, why don't you go talk to people who are victims of crime and see what they say about actually wanting to sit down with the person who's hurt them? You might understand why restorative justice is not the basis of our criminal justice system. Because that doesn't work, especially if people commit crimes, go to prison, get out, and decide to do it again. I mean, is it the responsibility of the victim to try to impart upon the criminal a sense of compassion, a sense of conscience, a sense of guilt? I mean, that's the only thing that's going to stop someone from committing crimes again. Short of desperation, poverty, or any other number of things, being high on drugs or otherwise. I'm not saying that talking something out with someone, coming to terms with it, finding some kind of closure, I'm not saying it can't be something that occurs. But it has to be as a result of the initiative and the desire on the basis of the victim that that's what they want to pursue. It shouldn't be up to the criminal. It shouldn't be up to the DA to make it happen. If the victim chooses to want to go down that road, by all means, hopefully it does some good for you. That's all I can wish for somebody. But trying to systemize it, trying to implement it, I don't know. Doesn't sound like she really sold me on the idea. What do you guys think? We'll take the last couple minutes here and see what you guys think about it. Scrolling up a bit. Tartan Rose, restorative justice only means the criminal can go through this, pay it lip service, and go out and do it again. I also believe the current justice system is not working properly, but that's just me. No system is perfect. There is no. This is partially. Well, actually, it's a great deal why I'm against the death penalty. A penalty that cannot be rescinded assumes a perfect system that arrived at it. Now, you can't take back death once you've dealt it. And since no system is perfect, you can't have a systematic punishment for a system that could make mistakes. You know? So that's why I'm against the death penalty as a rule. I think if you commit a crime heinous enough to deserve it, you should rot in a box for the rest of your life. That's it. Because there's always the possibility, and we've seen it time and time again, that somebody gets sentenced for something they didn't do. And once you pull that trigger, so to speak, you can't unpull it. So, yeah. No system is perfect. And I'm not going to claim our criminal justice system is perfect. But as far as due process goes, you can't really ask for more for most countries, most history of civilization. Becca Fairley, some crimes require the victim to participate, especially during the discovery phase of a case. Lack of participation could cause the case to be dismissed and justice is lost. Yeah, that was the one part that I didn't really, she never mentioned. It's like, the victim never has a chance to participate. Like, well, as a witness, they do. I mean, in a lot of cases, in most cases, it's the testimony of the victim that goes towards the state's case. So usually they have to face the person that they're accusing. In fact, that's part of our process. Face your accuser. So if it's the state doing it, or if it's an individual doing it, you have to be there for part of it in some way, shape, or form. Again, depends on the circumstances, depends on the crime. But yeah, how is the victim not a part of the process? Short of them being literally unable to participate because they're dead or comatose or something. Let's see. No room for squares. Right on. I do believe eye for an eye, but our justice system is so broken, corrupt, and dysfunctional. Yeah, like I say, I'm not going to say our justice system is perfect, but it's, in my mind, is difficult to find systems in other countries that are markedly better than what we have in our country. And sure, there are corrupt officials and things like that, just like with any system in any country on the planet and throughout history. Now, that's not making an apology for those actions. If you're caught doing something and abusing your official position or something, you should be held to account just like any criminal. But restorative justice, again, she never really got specific either about the crimes that it applies to. I mean, she went to the top. She went to murder. She went to life without parole, murder. And so if it can go there, well, then it can apply to anything. And so it would have to be on a case-by-case basis, and only then if the victims elect to participate. And that's it. I don't even know why she mentioned the criminals or their families. Like, what do they have to do with anything? That's the criminal's responsible for that. They commit a crime, they get taken away from their family, they break up their family as a result of their crime or something. That's on them. That's a whole other ball of wax. Yeah, that part just boggled me, that she would mention the criminals and their families before mentioning the victims. It's amazing. Assassin the Gray, she is only about making activists feel good, no one else. Well, yeah, I mean, she talked about me and other researchers and DAs and stuff sit in the back room. We talk about these ideas and, sort of sniff each other's farts for a while. And yeah, we got a great system that'll stop mass incarceration. If only we can get those victims to sit down and have a heart-to-heart with the people that hurt them, then everything will be better. Because, Colorado, I would love to see the crime statistics in Colorado and just see how no crimes are committed anymore because of restorative justice, right? Or, the crime rate has dropped to only a tenth of what it used to be because of restorative justice, right? Right. Chank right. All right. Well, let's see. Talita Constantine. When I was violently attacked, I wasn't shown compassion. Why would I be willing to be compassionate? Again, you're not obligated to. You shouldn't be obligated to if you don't want to. You're not required to. And in fact, I would completely understand if you didn't want to be. Why should you offer a gift to someone who does not deserve it? Forgiveness is a gift. It has to be earned. If by some way, shape, or form, the criminal, I don't know, gives some kind of sincere sign of remorse, and you choose to take that extra step yourself, that's up to you. But they don't deserve it. They didn't earn it. And even if they are actually remorseful, you're not under any obligation to take part. Yeah. Anyway, I think we've done that. So anyway, thank you guys for joining me on this interesting little sojourn. Again, a subject that I've always been very curious about. I will continue to be curious about, and I'll continue to look for a convincing sales pitch on the off chance that someone comes up with a really good idea, because I like really good ideas to big problems. So far, this isn't it. But anyway, guys, I will be doing another one of these in the near future, probably on Saturday, maybe. I'm going to try to limit myself to one live stream a day. So that includes Lords of the Night. So I'll do that tomorrow night on Friday. And I've got another TEDx picked out for the next one I do. But until then, guys, hope you all are safe and well. If you're not well, please get well soon. All of you, thank you for coming out to joining me today. All of you who donated, thank you so much for your generosity, especially in this insane time we find ourselves in. As soon as I am feeling safe enough, whenever that is, to leave the apartment, I will spend it on horrible things to go into my body, including goldfish and Dr. Pepper, and also paper towels, and and probably other things that are more practical first, but certainly Dr. Pepper and goldfish. All right, guys, have a good rest of your day, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care.